Just 1 week before games are on the field. Toe meets leather. And we got a great show for you. Excited to bring you the FCS CheckDown. Nathan McCurry, Brandon Joseph, and a guest, Sam Herder, joining us here for this broadcast as we're going to talk FCS football. Big Sky. We got a team-by-team analysis, and then we will talk about predictions. And we have a little special all FCS names segment here at the bottom. But first of all, Brandon, good to have you back. I know you've had a busy week. How the heck are you?
Moving is always tough, and just when you think you're down the road on buying a house, curveballs happen. So you just have to, it's like any coach would say, get punched in the chin and regroup and go back at it. But no, it's a busy time of year. High school football starting in the Metro Atlanta area, so just trying to do due diligence on homes and football teams, I guess.
Life happens, and we're welcoming in Sam Herder. And Sam, you had a big life change this week, this summer rather, getting married. Congratulations! Thank you so much for taking time to join the show.
Yeah, thank you guys. It's been a great summer, a busy summer, and now football right around the corner. So gearing up for what should be a pretty exciting FCS football season. And yeah, thank you guys again for having me.
Yeah, I'm going to change your Twitter handle there because it's not Coach Jackson. It's Coach Jackson's birthday today, and his wife, I think we may have spoiled the surprise on a birthday party because he was like, hey, I told her we're broadcasting at 7 Eastern time, and she's like, well, I got a birthday party. I was a surprise, and I hope we didn't ruin it. But happy birthday, Coach Jackson. We miss you, and let's go ahead and get into some FCS news. Guys, obviously, it's just ahead of the season. We still have things coming out about the FCS and how it stands as far as the governance. There's a lot of big questions. And Sam, I'll turn this question to you. What are you seeing? What momentum do you see in the FCS governance and the news and the questions that are coming out? Do you think we'll have any answers anytime before the end of this season?
I think there's a lot of unknowns and uncertainties still. Just with where all this is going, and it seems there's a lot of at least from like the ADs and commissioners I talk to, they say that a lot of it is reactionary to just kind of see what the A4, the Power Four, as we like to call them, what they're going to do with the governance. And I think, with not to get too into the weeds, because I know some fans are fascinated with this, other ones it kind of just glosses over. But with the weighted voting power that the A4 has, I do think there was a certain level of angst of what exactly they're going to do with that power. Now we saw some more details come out as far as like when it comes to auto bid access to championships, like that isn't weighted voting power.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with like distribution, like that's not weighted voting power either. But when it comes to membership requirements, that would fall under the weighted voting power of the A4, but there's like a 5 year kind of wait time until anything like that can be implemented. And so I don't know if we're necessarily going to see from an FCS football perspective, like during this football season, like we're going to like see it on the field. Like obviously, I
Right.
think the casual fan is not going to have any idea that there's this new governance. For the most part, whenever fans ask me, I kind of just go like, you probably it's a big deal, but like if you're just a person that wants to tailgate, watch your favorite team play, you're probably not going to notice really a whole lot with this in the weeds sort of governance stuff.
It's kind of weird, Brandon, I'll bring you in here, is that it feels to me that you're seeing some separation even at the FBS, SEC, Big Ten level, then everyone else in that mid-major level. That's going to trickle down to the FCS. Putting a little, crystal ball in front of you, what do you think might this be in 2 to 3 years as far as a subdivision for FCS and maybe another subdivision for mid-major and then the big money in the FBS Power Four conferences or whatever it may be?
Yeah, and to Sam's point, you won't see anything for 5 years, as you mentioned. Part of the agreement is that 5 year runway, I think, for lack of a better term. The good thing also is these guys aren't very good at keeping secrets. I mean, they're all egomaniacal maniacs, and credit to them, they're very successful. They got there by being very smart and being successful, but they can't keep a secret. They always got to tap their chest when they have a small victory, and Greg Sankey is number one on there, and he'll be the first to admit that himself. But these guys are going to telegraph their moves, so I don't think anything will be out of the blue to anybody. I think they've already started telegraphing their moves and what they want. I mean, they were kind of behind the premise of that Knight Commission stuff that came out, I mean, almost a year ago
Right.
to the day almost. I think, from gathering, what I've heard through, various channels is they want to limit access. And we saw it years ago by 5,000 to 5 million. They want to limit that access. They want to make it exclusive. Now, how do they ensure that? Through their legislative power with the weighted voting system. It can't be on a per school basis. That's opening themselves up to lawsuits. And one of the big things that they want to limit now is how many times they have to drag themselves into court and defend their position, because the NCAA, I think they have one victory. They may have two victories at this point, but they don't have a good batting average. They're like two for every other case that they've had against them. So they don't trust that this could stand up legally. So what they're gonna have to do is kind of write rules around
Hmm.
certain things, certain requirements, and make sure teams or conferences, for lack of a better term, don't have a seat at the table anymore. As it stands right now, it is a general belief that if you gave them the choice right now, they would eliminate the Power Four, would eliminate some of the bottom conferences in the Group of Six, and say, you know what, you don't play our brand of football.
Hmm.
And it's really hard to argue that. Does the MAC play on the same level as even the ACC? Not really. So the general feeling is, how can we figure out a way to write them out of the equation? What that does, and it's something that we've kind of talked about before, is that will bump them down to another level. The biggest thing, the biggest advocate a conference like the MAC has, the Mountain West is in a different position. Their commissioner has come out and said things in the past couple of weeks. They're in a different position. They have to deal with a lawsuit with the Pac-12, and we're going to see a lot of collusion come out of that lawsuit. That's something that, once it gets in front of a judge, will be very entertaining, high theater. But the thing for the MAC is you need the American on your side. The American Conference, I think, is that group of six that has the most weight, the biggest vocal voice at the table, especially in the ears of the Big 12 and the ACC with the weighted voting power. They'll amount to 65%. That makes the ACC and the Big 12 very critical to what the SEC and the Big
Hmm.
10 want to do. And they have to figure out their college football playoff stuff. And as we saw this week, they can't even figure that out. So they have a lot more other fish to fry before they get to the rest of the FBS and what it will trickle down to the FCS. But ultimately, I do think they will get their way. And ultimately, I do think we will see a reimagining of what is the FBS level. And that's going to impact the FCS, because there will be some teams that are FBS teams that we think of as FBS teams that will ultimately be moved down to whatever this new
Hmm.
second tier. I don't even want to call it a second tier, but not the the FBS tier.
Yeah, and I mean, that may be a good thing. But Sam, I'll bring it back to the FCS. What we have this year, you've got University of Texas Rio Grande Valley coming in. You've got New Haven starting. Chicago State's going to be starting a football program. And then you've got Sacramento State, and Tarleton State, who are looking to maybe jump into the FBS. What do you feel like their positioning may be, as far as, we'll start with the new teams coming in that are developing even brand new programs like Grande Valley versus the Sacramento State? What do you think their landscape may be, as far as making decisions on what they're going to do next?
Yeah, I think there's some up and coming new FCS programs that are exciting. UTRGV, I think has massive potential just
Yeah.
with where they're located. I think they have some advantages with that. There's some other ones that have come into the FCS, mostly the NEC. Those type of programs where they come in and they're not really going to move the needle a whole lot, because the NEC is a one bid league. And I know that is some complaints about, in some of the bigger quote unquote FCS markets, the Montanas and the Dakotas, if you want to call those, big markets. But as far as, cities that pay attention to the FCS landscape the most, they'll see the blue bloods that leave, and then they'll see, some of the additions coming in via D2, or, in UTRGV's case, just starting a football program
Hmm.
from scratch. And I'd be interested to see if there's any D2 schools that, like a West Florida, for example, potentially, that maybe um, speeds up their want to go Division 1, because there is that 5 year more, or not 5 year. There is a temporary moratorium on allowing D2 into D1. I'm not sure like what the timeline is for that, as far as when that would be put into effect, but that could potentially speed up some D2 programs that are D2 powers that say, hey, if we want to go D1, maybe we got to go sooner than later because of this moratorium and kind of the Division One landscape reevaluating where exactly do we see teams fitting in. And as far as Sac State, I mean, I had their play-by-play guy on, Jason Ross,
Mhm.
excellent interview on the podcast a few weeks ago, and he he had just as many questions as I did, and I think Sac State fans and community folks and boosters also have just as many questions as us as far as, okay, the president was promising FBS. That didn't happen. They're promising a new stadium on campus. That got punted and is now potentially moving to a abandoned racetrack or something like that. And
Oh,
so, where are they getting this this money to fund this new stadium? Now there's I can't even. It's on my Twitter, but they're like potentially moving the stadium to somewhere else that's like 3 miles from campus. And half of Sac State's fans like that. The other half, oh, we need an on-campus stadium. You promised us an on-campus stadium, but we don't know where that money's coming from. Like what's going on. So there's just a lot of unknowns when it comes to Sac State, and there's been a lot of promises, and not a lot of them have been delivered. And so where they go from here, I'm not sure, because football-wise, they're kind of in no man's land right now. Like their Olympic sports are going to the Big West, which I think is a good move for their Olympic sports. But as far as their 2026 schedule, we don't know who they're playing, right? Like I think they probably have a few non-conference games already scheduled, previously scheduled, but they're going to be an independent in 2026 most likely, unless Conference USA extends an invite, which I don't necessarily see happening. I don't think the Mountain West has much interest. So I'd Sac State is a mystery to me. Where they go after this year, all I know is I'm happy that they're at least playoff eligible for 2025, because I'm curious, if are they a title contender? Are they a 6-6 squad? Are they somewhere in between? I have no idea. So at least we get to see them potentially compete in the playoffs this year.
well, let's go
Yeah,
ahead
and
and
to
talk.
Sam's point, real quick
Yeah, go ahead.
about Sac State, we all forget in this, and it may not be something a lot of people know. The university system in California is almost bankrupt. They don't have money to pay
Yeah.
people, and that's where it was kind of weird that the president, Luke Wood, was coming out making all of these promises. And as people are digging down deeper and drilling down deeper into some of this, there's a lot of question marks that are coming up with contracts awarded, consultants being hired that are friends of the brother of the president of the university. There's a lot more questions and answers as this timeline develops. So yeah, to Sam's point, I think you don't know. This could be an FBS program in 2 to 3 years, or this program could not exist, based on some of the things that are coming out about this. The university system and how it's being run at Sac State. So I think they're the biggest question mark across all of football.
Yeah, it is interesting because it seemed like they had so much momentum and they had a good fundraising, and then on the field it didn't really pan out, and then all these questions started coming into, okay, how are they going to do this, and then the invite
There are
wasn't
also
there.
insurances in the contract of Mike Bibby, their basketball coach, and their football coach, of if they are not at certain points, or if they can't pay them some of the promises amounts, that they can leave. So even the coaching
Whoa.
in the Brennan Marions and the Mike Bibbies, nothing is guaranteed past this year.
Wow. Lots of question marks, but it's got to also be played out on the field, and they have to have a successful play in the field. They did not have a good season. We'll talk about that. Let's go ahead and look at the Big Sky. That's what we're previewing today, is the Big Sky for 2025, the preseason media poll. I'm going to put it up here, guys, as you see Montana State pick number 1, Grizz number 2, UC Davis, Idaho, Northern Arizona, who had a great season, and then it falls off of Sacramento State, Idaho State, Eastern Washington, Weber State, Portland State, Cal Poly, and Northern Colorado. That's your media poll coming out for the 2025 season. And Brandon, I'll ask you, what is your initial thought on this preseason poll? I know we kind of talk about, preseason polls. Coaches can, don't like them and stuff. But in this case, Montana State, a lot of change. Still good momentum from the championship run. Montana's always going to be there. UC Davis had an excellent season. Your initial thoughts there on that media poll?
Yeah, I can potentially make a case to flip 1 and 2 in there, Montana to Montana State. If you take a look, a lot of what Montana State had to overcome, they were bailed out a lot by Tommy Mellott. Do you win those games necessarily moving forward? I don't know. Northern Arizona, I think They could be very well slot into that fourth spot. The thing that stands out to me, everybody, and we've seen this now the past couple of year after year, Weber State keeps falling down, but somehow they're in the mix late in the year. I don't know necessarily, and we've criticized Weber State a bunch, and I think most of it rightly so. I don't know if you can necessarily write Weber State towards the end of the poll like there, but yeah, I'm not a biggest fan of preseason polls. I think a lot of it is just made up and minutia. But yeah, how can you say that Sacramento State right now is a better team than anybody else below them? To your point, Nathan, we don't know. You bring in a bunch of transfers. So did Mike Norvell last year at Florida State, and they couldn't find water if they fell off the Titanic.
Yeah, and Sam, I think Brendan Marion's he's stirring it up a little bit over there. I think there's a lot of excitement around that go-go offense. How about you on this media poll?
Yeah, I think one thing that's interesting, if you just look at it from a macro perspective, I mean, just the fact that Eastern Washington is number 8 and Weber State is number 9. Like if this was 2018 right now, you'd be going, how the heck did it, like what is going on here? I mean, the fall of both of these programs, it has really just been so drastic. And I think part of that goes to show just how good of a coach Jay Hill was. How he flipped that program into routinely being a quarterfinal type of contender, and then he leaves and things fall off pretty quickly. Eastern Washington has its budget struggles and all that, but they for so long they were able to do so much more with a lot less and still be able to get that top end NFL level talent. And now you've just seen that fall off as well. So those are kind of two. I know like we typically look at like the top 4, the top 6 in this, but just seeing those two in the bottom 6, it's still so startling. But at the same time, it's been a steady decline where like now you just kind of expect them to be somewhere in the bottom half. But you always kind of feel like just with uh, some of their history, like maybe they can trend back up. Eventually we'll see if that can happen or not. But as far as the top 3, I do think that's a strong top 3.
Mm-hmm.
Montana State has, they lost a lot via graduation, lost a few more guys via the transfer portal, but I really like what they have coming back on the offensive and defensive lines, and then also at running back. And if you can start there in the FCS, I think you're sitting pretty good. UC Davis, I think is going to be really, really interesting because they have like 6 3-star recruits in their quarterback room right now. Now, a lot of those guys are out of California, and it's easier to be a 3-star quarterback out of California than like just out of like Idaho. But there's still a lot of talent in that room. They have 5 returning offensive linemen for UC Davis. How they replace Land Larison will be super interesting. But the more I've looked into UC Davis, the more I'd like. And then Montana is also super intriguing because it's interesting with the Grizz because you look at personnel wise, okay, offense, they have potential to be pretty good. If they could settle on the quarterback spot, that would make a whole lot of difference. But defensively, it's a whole new defense as far as personnel. But then you look at their schedule and you go, okay, most of their toughest opponents are at home, and so I could see them winning this game. I can see them winning that game, and all of a sudden you pencil out like 10-2, 11-1 with Montana based on the schedule. But then you look at the personnel, you're like, well, maybe not. So Montana is just another fascinating team to me.
Yeah, it is. Well, let's go ahead and go do a team-by-team look at these guys. We'll start there at the bottom with it's Northern Colorado Bears head coach Ed Lamb. They were 1-11 last year, 1-7 in the conference with their win coming against Weber State, 21-17. Ed Lamb has won 1 game in 2 seasons. He was 0-11 in 2023. The question is, will this year be any different? If change is going to happen on offense. Northern Colorado only scored 11.3 points per game in 2025, which was dead last in the FCS. Their quarterback, Kyle Keone, will continue to run the spread offense to offensive coordinator Justin Waltershed. The running game was no help to the offense last year, so improvements are definitely needed there. The Bears' leading receiver in 2024 was Braden Monroe, who returns to improve in his sophomore season, is joined by fellow sophomore Carter Cheeks. Transfers on offense could contribute, including running back Kenny Johnson out of Arizona, 3-star, and A.J. Burton, a big offensive guard from Iowa State. The defense has been better from aspects last season, but they need to get better all the way around. Northern Colorado, Ed Lamb, Brandon Johnson, I know that we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on Northern Colorado. It's an uphill battle. The Lamb family, of course, this is not the Lamb family that we know, but a different Lamb family. But it's a good hire, and he just got a contract renewal after 2024. So just thoughts on Northern Colorado being the bottom of the Big Sky.
No, winning one game, I mean, that's could be considered a step up. It's tough because they run a spread offense and they're not very good offensively, which means when you run a spread offense and you're not very good offensively, what happens? A lot of 3-and-outs. You
Right.
throw the ball a lot, you get off the field quickly. The defense spends a lot more time on the field, and over the course of 4 quarters, they wear down. Offensively, can they pick up first downs? You would hope with a returning quarterback and 2 very good receivers, they can figure something out, at least prolong the offensive time of possession and to make this offense a little more viable. But you're also a victim of your conference. You go 1-7 in conference last year. Where's the improvement going to come from? One more game potentially. So I don't really see much different in terms of what the schedule will look like at the end of the year in terms of wins and losses. Their growth is going to have to be, are they in games longer? Are you getting to the 4th quarter and it's a 1-possession game with 8 minutes to go? That's where success is going to be measured, I think, on Ed Lamb.
All right, Sam, give the Bear fans something to be encouraged about.
Well, I think if you want to feel encouraged, like I do think they have the right man for the job with Ed Lamb. I mean, he's found success previously in the Big Sky at Southern Utah, but I mean, Northern Colorado is just so far behind. And I mean, keep in mind, like when they were Division II, they were a good Division II program, but they just haven't found any success, and they've had head coaching turnover in the previous head coach. That was a whole different mess. That's a whole nother podcast that talk about the previous coaching staff. So it's uphill sledding for Northern Colorado. But when they hired Ed Lamb, you kind of went, okay, that's a good hire right there. But I mean, it's so difficult to find traction if you don't have the resources, especially when you're in a conference like the Big Sky.
I'm going to go ahead and predict they will beat Weber State again this year. Maybe Sac State. You never know. All right. Cal Poly up next. The Mustangs, San Luis Obispo, 3-8 last year, 2-6 in the Big Sky. Paul Wolf is in his 3rd season. They defeated Sac State 26-23 in Week 10. Quarterback Jackson Akins threw for 305 yards and 2 touchdowns and 0 interceptions, both seasons high in that game. Safety Jeremiah Bernard forced a game-winning fumble in the final minute of the game. Bo Kelly was injured in 2024. He returns to compete for that starting job as Coach Wolf returns, mentioned, for his 3rd season. He's going to be on the hot seat if things do not change. Quick thought on Cal Poly. Sam, I'll let you start here. Cal Poly, again, a pretty prestigious program. They have a good marketing. They've got it's a good location in the country. Just hadn't got that football team playing well in a long time.
Yeah, it's an interesting program because as far as just like location wise, like you should be able to recruit to there so easily, but they do have, academic standards that can make it a bit more challenging. But they have nice facilities. They have like the John Madden complex or indoor. I don't know specifically what it's called, but it's a beautiful facility for locker rooms and weight room and stuff like that. They were a pretty good program in the 2010s, made a couple of playoff appearances. That was when they ran the option. And I think it was one of those things where they were so different than everyone else. That's what made them so difficult to prepare for. And then they did a 180 and tried to go, to the spread, and that just hasn't worked out. And so they always have, pretty good individual talent, but the depth of talent for Cal Poly is makes it a challenge for them to compete in the upper half of the Big Sky.
Brandon, again, bottom of the Big Sky, uphill battle. You got any comments on Poly?
Ty Diffenbeck is the quarterback that's transferred into Cal Poly. He's the one that's going to be competing with Bo Kelly for the job. I think Bo Kelly is the odds are on hands-on favorite to probably take the starting job to start the year, but I don't think he's going to have a long leash at quarterback there.
All right. They'll have some work to do, as only a couple wins there in the Big Sky. All right, moving on to Portland State Vikings. 3-8 last year, 3-5 in the Big Sky, finishing 9th. Bruce Barnum in his 11th season. A poor start to 2024 set the tone for the remainder of the season. The Vikings, again, just 3 wins in the Big Sky. Their defense allowed almost 40 or over 40 points per game, dead last in the conference. Offensively, the Vikes were a massive threat at times, and other times just meh. Quarterback Dante, I can't remember how to pronounce his name. Sam, help me out. How do you pronounce his name? Is it Kachiri? Anyway.
I'm not even sure.
Yeah. It's you know what, it's not what it looks like, but anyway, he put the team on his shoulders most of the games, and he had a good season. He's going to return here in 2025. They're going to look to see if he can bring some energy to this Viking squad again at the bottom of the Big Sky. This is a team that has had some success in not too distant future, a distant past rather, and this just the conference schedule is so tough. Brandon, I'll let you start here. The Vikes, Portland State, they got some weapons on offense, but the defense has got to improve.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be tough. Their leading tackler last year was Isaiah Green. He's a defensive back or the leading returning tackler there. That's not very good. The more tackles your defensive back has, which means either he's spending a lot of time closer to the line of scrimmage, which that may benefit, depending on scheme, but more times than not, they're downfield, and that's just because people are able to move the ball on you. Defensively is going to dictate what they are able to do. They just allowed so many yards defensively.
Yeah.
They have to get better. I think they were 150, 140 or something like that, 130 in defensive yards per game. They got to get better on that end and step up and play better, at least on the defensive line. I saw in some notes they have a couple of edge guys returning. If those guys can't get to the quarterback, your season is a lost cause.
Yeah, no doubt. And Sam, this is a team that looks like they picked off a couple transfers, but their recruiting and transfer window was probably a little weak as far as Portland goes. Just your thoughts on the Vikes?
Yeah, I mean Portland State. I mean Bruce Barnum is, he's great to talk to, right? He's a hilarious guy, and in many aspects, he's probably the perfect guy for this job, just because Portland State is also just up against it when it comes to, I mean, they don't their home stadium like that. That's kind of been a fiasco, and they really get lost in the shuffle, and not the best when it comes to resources and
Mm-hmm.
those sort of things. And I mean, initially, I can't remember when Bruce Barnum's first year was. It maybe like around 2014, 2015.
Right.
I mean, they made the playoffs. They beat two FBS opponents in 1 year. And I think if I recall in talking with Barney, initially the first couple of years was, all right, let's bring in transfers. I think a lot of them were JUCO or D2. Bring in transfers right away. Get this thing turned around right away. And then they did that, and then they went to, okay, we found success, let's go the high school route now and develop guys and build our program that way, which I agree with. I like that model more so than transfer heavy, but that just didn't go the way Portland State wanted it to. And again, another program that has had strong individual talents, like some of their quarterback play. They've had some standout wide receivers. They've had, I can't remember who was a tight end a couple of years ago that was a draft prospect. So they've
Mm-hmm.
had individually some skilled guys, but when it comes to the trenches, it just hasn't been there for Portland State. And they're always kind of a team that's hanging out there. Maybe it's just because like they'll scare a team here or there. They beat Montana like a handful of years ago in
Yeah.
Missoula, so you're always like, well, maybe Portland State can make a little noise, and then maybe they do a little bit, but they're always hovering right around 500, usually right below 500, and not really been in a position to make the playoffs.
Yeah, and you kind of predict them to be back there in the bottom half of the table. All right, Weber State, the Wildcats out of Ogden, Utah in 2024, 4-8, 3-5 in the Big Sky. The Wildcats had another unusual season of potential, starting the season in the top 25, then quality wins versus Montana, a hangover loss at home to Northern Colorado, the Bears' only win of the season. And the Wildcats went on to an epic slide. Mickey Mental enters his third season, just 10 wins in his first two seasons. The seat is getting hotter there in Ogden, and Weber State, again, a proud program. They've done some great things. We've seen them in the FCS playoffs make some deep runs. But Sam, I'll start with you. Weber State's had a tough time. Mickey Mental in that third season, this is where you kind of expect them to maybe take a step forward under his reign, or they might move on.
Yeah, it's just been a steady decline ever since Jay Hill left, and the talent level. I mean, Jay Hill and his staff, they were such great recruiters, and he had great FBS connections that helped him with that. And you've just seen, that decline in talent level. And before, I mean, you would watch Weber State and just defensively, like dudes at linebacker. Defensive line was stout, and offensive line was massive and huge. And they still have some good guys coming back. I think Gavin Ortega is a really good offensive lineman. Matt Huron is a really stout
Mhm.
defensive tackle for them, and so they still have some guys. A young running back coming back as well, and Godley. But quarterback play has been a bit hit or miss there for Weber State, and so I don't know if maybe they'll be a bit improved compared to last year, but they're not necessarily on my radar as far as a sleeper team that could sneak into the playoffs when not a lot of people are expecting them to be in the postseason.
Yeah, Brandon, we've been there. It's a beautiful stadium, a proud program. They've got great fans. They just hadn't put it together on the field yet.
Yeah, beauty and pride are nice things to have, and I hope they keep that when they take a bunch of L's this year. This is, I mean, you go out of the gate, and yeah, could they contend with James Madison? Some years, but not this year. You have your starter's going to be a transfer quarterback. I don't know which one they brought in. A couple will be their starting quarterback. I don't know how that's going to work. Generally, what we've seen is when the seats start getting a little bit hot, the head coach, who's also the offensive coordinator, will have to give up one of those duties. Mickey Mantle has not given up that offensive coordinator title, or at least brought somebody else in name, even if it was for smoke and mirrors. But they're going to have a tough go of it, and that's going to be the tough part for Weber State. By the time they hit their conference slate, they're going to have, I think, 4 losses. Or after they hit the first couple of games, I'm sorry, in the conference, they're going to have 4 losses. So what does the end of the season look like when you've already taken L's in all the big games? James Madison, you're probably going to lose. Arizona, you're going to lose. Are you going to lose to McNeese? Maybe, maybe not. You're going to lose to UC Davis to start the year. That Sac State game. Again, we don't know what Sac State is going to be really outside of being on paper. So they're going to have 4 losses within the first 7 weeks of the season. How do they respawn from there? I don't know.
Hmm.
And to you guys' point, I don't know if when you are under the hot seat, you get some desperation there, but I don't know if this season is going to be salvageable for Weber State, and they may be looking for a new head coach by the time the year's out.
Yeah, we shall see. Weber State, again, finished 8th in the Big Sky. We'll see what they can do here in 2025. Moving on to Eastern Washington Eagles and Cheney, Washington. We mentioned him a little bit earlier. 4-8 last year, and Aaron Best in his 9th season. They finished with ranked wins against Sacramento State on the road. Scoring was not an issue for Eastern Washington, 35.8 points per game, tied for 6th in the nation in the FCS, and ranked number 1 in third down conversions with 56.4%. Defense was a problem, allowing 36.2 points per game. That was 112th in the nation, and 476 yards allowed per game. Aaron Best brings 2 FBS level transfers, Reed Sun out of Wyoming and Tyler Lupolo out of Temple. Both have experience under their belts. A new signal caller will be under center as dynamic quarterback Kiko Visperis transferred to Tennessee Tech, and kind of a surprise move. They kick off against UIW in San Antonio, Texas. Eastern Washington, and we've talked about this, they're one of those programs, Brandon, that it seems like the FCS better when the Eastern Washington is playing well. You got the red field and all kind of stuff around it. They haven't played well in a long time, and they've done some good things. They brought in some players. I don't know if they brought in enough and to compete in this conference. I don't know where they'll be. What do you think?
I think they'll take a step back offensively. Jared Taylor is the assumed starter there. He can run the ball a little bit, pass the ball pretty well there, but they're going to have to run the ball with their quarterback a good bit. That's, I would say, more of his MO than being able to pass the ball. But I do think they got better defensively. I do think they brought in a lot of transfers. You mentioned a couple of them. That's going to help them defensively. So what's the trade-off? Do you take a step back from being a top 10 offensive program to improve being 128 or whatever that number was defensively, and where does it equal out? Probably will wash out in the grand scheme of things, and they'll be close to their record that they were last year. But I do think when you look at this team and you see them play, they're going to be better defensively. So I don't think they're going to have to win every game in one of these shootouts. Now, do they have the moxie to win? Backs against the wall, a minute 15 left to go. Can they drive down the field and win a football game? I don't think so. I don't think that team is there yet. But they'll be in that position, and it won't be, hey, we've scored 50 points, but we've given up 63.
Sam, it's a big surprise, Vesperis going to Tennessee Tech from Eastern Washington. That's kind of West Coast people don't like that. That's where FCS football thrives, to go to Tennessee Tech and not a program that's especially been successful. What were your thoughts on that move, and just your thoughts overall on Eastern Washington?
Yeah, it was interesting. Certainly, I think I don't know what offers Vesperis all had in the portal. I know one was Montana, and so a lot of people were kind of like, "Oh, what if the Eastern Washington quarterback goes to Montana? Like, wouldn't that be a bit of a storyline?" And then he goes to Tennessee Tech, and I like Tennessee Tech actually. I thought they were a good program last year, and I expect them to take the next step this year and be in the playoff mix. And it's interesting too. Richie Munoz, the starting quarterback last year at Weber State, he enters the portal. He goes to UIW during the spring, re-enters the portal, and ends up at Tennessee Tech. And so
Right.
there's two starting quarterbacks from the Big Sky now battling it out, for Tennessee Tech. But when you look at Eastern Washington, I mean, just looking at their schedule, their first home game isn't until September 20th. I mean, 3 straight road games to start the year. And the first one at UIW. I mean, that could be first one to 60 points, wins that one. That could be a highly entertaining game. And then going to Boise State, going to Northern Iowa. Northern Iowa is certainly down, but that's another tough place to play for Eastern Washington. And it's just a fascinating program because there's so much pride there and so much history there. And in Aaron Best's first year, I believe his first year is when they won the national, or not, they made it to the national
Right.
championship game during the 2018 season. And it wasn't long ago, like 2021, they had a good squad. But then since then, it's been that decline, similar to what we've seen with Weber State. So it's unfortunate because I would probably consider Eastern Washington an FCS blue blood. Same thing with Northern Iowa, and probably to a certain extent Weber State's, even though their success has been more recent. But those are programs that are just really down right now, and it's kind of tough to see from an FCS perspective, but at the same time, other programs have risen up. And so, like Eastern Washington, Weber State are down. Idaho has risen up. Northern Arizona has risen up. And so there's always give and take with these things, I suppose.
Yeah, and one of the
You
teams
know,
that
you
took.
know what happened. You know what happened, Nathan.
What's that?
Tennessee Tech called the SoCon. Was like, "What would it take for you to invite us?" And they were like, "You need to get a Big Sky quarterback in there." So they got two, just to make sure that they could get in there.
Just to pad
That's
it.
not
Yeah.
true, everybody. Before somebody tweets me, I know it's not true.
Well, we'll see what happens. But to your point, another team in the Big Sky that is taking step forwards is Idaho State Bengals, 5-7 last year under Cody Hawkins. It's going to be his third season. They finished 6th in the Big Sky. A weak defense was what doomed the Bengals last season. They had another subpar team that picked up quality wins against Sacramento State and Weber State, allowing a shocking 77 points to Eastern Washington. Speaking of the Eagles, it was hard to watch. The squad allowed 37.8 points per game in the Big Sky in 2024. Gone are superstar linebacker Logan George, who transferred to Ohio State. Offensively, a new look offense is needed, and there needs to be improvement at every position. Idaho State, and under the command of Cody Hawkins, they have improved. And it's going to be interesting to see if they have done enough in the offseason to continue to improve, Sam. At Idaho State, Cody Hawkins is a great, I think, coach. I mean, I think the right guy for the job, kind of the horses for courses. This is a guy, I think, that can get some wins. He's got to be able to attract the talent to Idaho State, however.
Yeah, and you saw immediate success as well with him, and he kind of reinvigorated that program. Definitely a pass-happy attack. It'll be interesting. I believe Jordan Cook is who had a pretty solid season 2 years ago. I was limited to one game last year. I imagine he's probably the front runner there to be the starting quarterback and winging around, score a lot of points. I'm sure it's a very fun system to be a part of. But defensively is really where the struggles were, and Idaho State's kind of that sleeper team to me, as far as maybe not a playoff team, but is going to knock off a playoff hopeful team in week 6 and week 7, and kind of play that spoiler role in the Big Sky this year.
Yeah, I can tell you that that's exactly what I looked at. Is like, okay, this is a team that if you're on a roll, maybe tired late in the season, Brandon, this is a team you don't want to play, because Cody Hawkins is a great football coach, and they find a way to pick up big wins in games, big games.
Yeah, and Jordan Cook, to Sam's point, the presumptive starter for Idaho State, he is a kid that can sling the pill. and Cody Hawkins, former quarterback in Colorado, spent a cup of coffee over in the NFL, but he's a quarterback guy too. His dad, Dan, quarterback guy. So they all speak the same language there. We were all when Cody ended up taking this job, and Dan kind of made it clear, hey, I'm on my last couple of years doing this. It was basically to get Cody the head coaching job. This is where Cody Hawkins wants to be. I think he, as Sam going to mention, reinvigorated the program. Came in there. He's going to be a guy that's going to make it fun offensively. And this was a top 30 offensive team last year. I think they get better this year. They're returning a lot of guys, especially on the offensive line. They'll get better on the offensive line from their play last year. They'll take that step up. They're going to have to score points to win games. I don't think they'll be there defensively, but late in the year, if you are a team coming off of a really tough game 7 days prior, and you slip up and you look up and you're down 21-0 to Idaho State, they're going to make it tough for you to come back on them no matter how bad they are defensively, because this offense does have the ability, one, to keep scoring points, but two, do it in a way that they will possess the ball a lot and control the time of possession in the game.
Yeah. I think they're dangerous there and they're going to be in the middle of the table for the Big Sky. All right, turning to Sacramento State. And out of Sacramento, California, 3-9. Very disappointing season last year. 11th in the Big Sky at 1-7. The Hornets seemed to be focused on the move to the FBS and ended the season with poor performances against Idaho State and Cal Poly, we mentioned earlier. Enter new head coach Brennan Marion, considered one of the top offensive minds in college football after an impressive stint at UNLV. His go-go offense sparked the interest of football fans after the Running Rebs had success with multiple FCS quarterbacks, including former Campbell quarterback Haj Malik Williams. 29 newcomers, 40 transfers, 34 are FBS squad, 1 4-star running back Sam Adams, the second out of Washington, 28 3-stars, which earned #1 recruiting class in the FCS. This is going to be a fun team to watch. Of course, we've seen teams come in and bring in a bunch of recruits and they can't find a way to gel. We'll start here with you, Sam. Sacramento State, lots of buzz around this because of the fundraising, the money that they have, but they're not getting invited. It's almost like they're that guy that keeps showing up at the girl's door. She says, "No, I don't want to. You're not welcome to come in." And but
it's getting creepy at this point.
It's getting creepy at this point. Brennan Marion is a big name, a big hire, big time recruiter. Brought in some big names and some serious talent. Now they got to find a way to get it gelled together on the field.
Yeah, and we'll find out in a hurry too, right? Going to South Dakota State,
Yeah.
That's an opportunity for a splash win, or maybe you get humbled. Like that can go either way. And then the following week you go to Nevada, who's an FBS program, obviously, and I think that potentially could be an FCS over FBS win. It's one of my higher ranking ones as far as most likely. But the talent that Sac State has brought in, has just been immense, whether it be Jaden Rashada at quarterback, but there's also Cardell Williams, who has starting experience from Tulsa. The running back room they loaded up on. Jamar Curtis is an FCS All-American guy. They also brought in a couple of FBS transfer running backs with starting, experience at their previous school. Some wide receivers that were 4-star recruits just a couple of years ago. They redshirted last year as freshmen. That's Ernest Campbell and Jordan Anderson. Why were they 4-star recruits 2 years ago? Then they entered the portal and ended up at an FCS school. Like, or maybe they're not that good, or maybe they're ready to be absolute All-American level players for Sac State. We just don't know.
Yeah.
My question with the Hornets is, did they do enough defensively to bring in enough talent, because they were bad defensively last year? Did they do enough to get better on the offensive line and the defensive line as well? I think quarterback, running back, wide receiver, just loads of talent. They do bring back good experience from last year's offensive line, and that was an okay unit. My question, especially when it comes to playing, the South Dakota States of the world, like, can they hold up in the trenches? That's my #1 question for Sac State.
Yeah, Brandon, the quarterback coming in is a UGA transfer, but all those transfers, like I said, you got to find a way to get them to gel. There's a lot of new people on the field at the same time, and brand new head coach, brand new coaching staff, brand new players. That's a lot of new to try and weave in together, but the talent's there. Now they got to put it together again and make this team gel in a really short amount of time.
Yeah, and in this go-go offense, there'll be two running backs on the field, basically at all times doing different things. There may be a third lined up in the slot as a receiver. You're asked to do a lot of different things. Can Brennan Marion hit on all these guys? Does he have them in the right position at the right time? I will tell you this about Jaden Rashada. I got to see him, during his time at Georgia. He's a kid that can throw the ball very well, and it's going to be really quick throws with the go-go offense. You mentioned that first game of the season. It will be the hardest he's ever been hit in his recent collegiate career. He got to play a little bit at Georgia. It was not against, you know, ones. And he's going up against ones for the first time, I would say, in a long time there. So, how does he hold up over the course of a season? Because if that offensive line doesn't gel, guess what? You're getting hit a lot. And I think we saw that at UNLV with Hajim Malik Williams. He took a lot of hits unnecessarily. That's everything with Jaden Rashada, too. At a point, yeah, you have to be smart at the quarterback position not to take unnecessary hits. But at a point, too, the general consensus is he's only there for 1 year. Whether he gets an opportunity to go to the NFL or he gets a transfer back to the FBS, does he go into business for himself at any point and not
Mm.
pick up that extra yard? That's, not criticizing the kid. That's the question mark with him. If you know anything about his recruitment out there, going into business for himself, his family, that was kind of the MO of how he ended up at Arizona State to begin with and then Georgia. So I don't think that those are unfair questions going in. But back to Brennan Marion and this go-go offense. This is the first time the pressure's all on him. And when he was at UNLV, they didn't have a great defense. When he was at Howard before then, they didn't have a great defense. They had a pretty good defense. Some would say they had a better defense talent wise at Howard for the level than UNLV at the level there. But this is the first time he has to be accountable for the defense and what the defense does, putting them in position. Does he decide, because he's an offensive guy, to go for it on 4th and 2 because he has confidence in his offense at his own 42-yard line and put his defense in a really tough spot because there's an incomplete pass or there's a miscommunication on the offensive line. It's a tackle for a loss. Those are things that he has the way. The toughest thing for a coach to do in his first head coaching job is to account for both sides of the ball. And there's a lot of pressure on him at Sac State.
Yep, absolutely. All right, we will move on to Northern Arizona Lumberjacks. 8-5 last year, 6-2 in the Big Sky. Flagstaff, Arizona. Head coach Brian Wright replaced Chris Ball, who had had a very successful season. Well, that Lumberjacks really didn't miss a beat with the new head coach Wright. So, enter 2025 season. They lost to ACU, number 17, ACU, Abilene Christian, 27-0 in the first round of the playoffs. Outperforming expectations, earning that bid to the playoffs. They finished again 8-5. Were ranked wins against Sacramento State with success coming out of the transfer program, the FCS level. The Jacks weren't exempt. Leading tackler Alex McLaughlin is off to Washington Huskies. Quarterback Ty Pennington, followed by head coach Bryant Wright from Pittsburgh State, and had a great success being named the 2024 Big Sky Newcomer of the Year, adding a slew of receivers, including tight end Nissan Coleman from BYU and wide receiver Jason Haynes. Looks like Northern Arizona has reloaded and are ready to make another run here in the FCS in 2025. This is a team that I really, really like. I think they're really underrated. I think they've got a great marketing program. They obviously have a great field there in Flagstaff. Bryant Wright did a great job for this Lumberjacks program, Brandon, and now he's reloaded. They did lose some talents in that transfer portal. They brought some in. It's a tough conference to kind of have some question marks. I do think they have some big question marks, but Northern Arizona, what do you think?
My thoughts on the Lumberjacks is how many bids does this conference get? Because I think that will be determined on the success of their year. Because they could very well be at that cutoff point towards the bottom end, and if you believe 5 teams are getting in from the Big Sky, then they're in the mix there. If you believe 4 teams are getting in, they're in the mix there. But if you're telling me only 3 get in, they're maybe on the outside looking in. I think this will be a very good team offensively, mainly because Ty Pennington, not the guy from that house building show that used to be on back in the day, but this Ty Pennington, he's very cautious and in a good way with the football. You don't necessarily worry about him going out there making bad reads, throwing a bunch of interceptions. He's going to be protective of the football. He's going to make smart choices. If something's not there, he'll check down or get rid of it and live to fight another down. That's the biggest thing if you're a head coach and an offensive play caller is, okay, I can trust my quarterback out there. Where do we go and moving forward? This was a really good defense last year, a top 50 defense. If they can hover around there and make strides offensively, I see no reason why this is just check a box. They'll be playing in the playoffs. And the question is, where do they finish in conference there? And I think there will be some games that you go in there and they may not be favored in the game, but I think, when it's all said and done, you look at the lines, they will be, 8 points, 7 points, 6 points. And looking at that going in, they go, okay, they have a legitimate shot to win this game. It's going to be an X factor in the play. And that's where you lean on that defense to get a little bit better to create that X factor.
Yeah, and they did a good job, Sam, in recruiting. 19 signed, ranked 7th in the FCS according to 24/7, and 11 three-star recruits. That's 2 more than Montana. What do you think about this Northern Arizona squad?
Yeah, I like what they have coming back this year, and I think there's definitely fair arguments of from people when they push back on Northern Arizona getting in last year. I mean, playoff resume wise, it wasn't too much of a standout, resume,
Mhm.
and then their first round performance against Abilene Christian, I think just enhanced that. They didn't deserve to get in, but I do like what they have coming back. Um, especially offensively, and adding a couple of offensive linemen too with starting experience. And so you couple those two guys with the 3 returners, that's 5 offensive linemen with really good FCS starting experience. You put that in front of a returning quarterback and Ty Pennington. I think the offense is looking good. We'll see if the defense can continue to make strides. They have decent experience coming back, especially at the linebacker position. I think their non-conference is fascinating because they go to Southern Utah, who's always kind of right there in the playoff mix, and then they host UIW, and that's a massive opportunity right there. Plus hosting Montana State in the conference schedule, hosting Idaho as well, and so I mean schedule sets up decently well to potentially get an upset here or there at home. And I think that was one thing they were lacking last year. Is they didn't really
Yes.
have necessarily like that boom marquee win. Well, now they get a few highly ranked teams at home this year where potentially they get one of those marquee wins or two.
A couple players to watch. They have a set of twins, Miles Singleton, a wide receiver, and his brother Braylon Singleton, both out of Culver City, California. They both had interest from Power 5 schools that they chose to come to Northern Arizona. Let's see if they can make a difference, see if they can get on the field as freshmen. All right, moving on. Idaho Vandals, they finished 10-4. Good season under Jason Eck, 6-2. Well, Jason Eck is now gone, and now new head coach Thomas Ford Jr. steps in. They lost to number 1 Montana State 52-19 in the quarterfinals. Big change for the Vandals at that head coach position. Of course, Jason Eck went to New Mexico, leaving Idaho to build a new staff. And Coach Ford is the man. His first-time head coach with FBS experience at Washington and Oregon State. Second time Coach Ford, who was hired in Moscow as he ran the running backs coach, and his brother played for the Vandals. 56 returners will help the Vandals with some consistency. He's trying to install a clear vision why is for the team. They want to know why we should be in the Big Sky and be considered competitors after losing your head coach. Jack Wagner is back and will help keep in high energy, high expectations for this Vandals squad. It is Idaho Vandals, and we'll start with Brandon Joseph, or maybe I start with Sam, actually. Sam, Idaho Vandals, it was a huge loss losing Coach Eck. Not only was he a great football coach, he was extremely well liked, and he just fit in Moscow. Now you got a new head coach, but a lot of returners. How that mix is going to work is up in the air.
Yeah, this is going to be an interesting team because we always felt that Idaho was a sleeping giants that just couldn't get any traction since coming down from the FBS to the FCS. And then they hired Jason Eck, and boom, I think 3 for 3 as far as 3 playoff appearances in his 3 seasons. Now with him leaving, usually what happens when a head coach leaves is a lot of transfers transfer out, whether they follow him or they go somewhere else. And Idaho lost around 20 guys to the FBS. And so you kind of look at Idaho and go, okay, was that a 3-year kind of lightning in a bottle, or that can they sustain that success and keep on being in the playoff mix? I think they have a decent nucleus coming back, maybe more
Mhm.
so than people think, especially offensively. 3 starting offensive linemen are coming back. I really like their running back duo and Nate Thomas and Elijah Cummings. Joshua Wood is coming in, Fresno State transfer quarterback. They pretty much declared like, this is our guy. Like,
Yeah.
there's no quarterback battle. They brought him in after spring ball, which I think kind of goes to show that maybe they didn't like what they had, during spring ball. Jack Wagner is back, and he was the starter for half of last year. I think he has a long ways to go. So they went portaling and they found Joshua Wood, and there's high hopes for him. And if he can hit, I think that offense has a chance to be pretty good. And then defensively, new defensive coordinator. Maybe being a little bit more aggressive defensively this year compared to past years. A lot of production to replace, but I think they have a good linebacker in Isaiah King. Donovan Parham is a defensive end transfer from Mississippi Valley State. I think he could potentially be an all Big Sky guy, just with his frame coming off of the edge and his, and he had nice production as well coming from the SWAC. Yeah, I think he could be a splash addition as well via the transfer portal.
Nice. Brandon, how about you think about them Vandals?
Yeah, I think the biggest problem last year was with their quarterback was, they did not necessarily have the numbers completion wise, and being able to push the ball down the field. I mean, I think he was what, sub 60 in the games that he played, and health was an issue too for quarterback at Idaho as well. So to Sam's point, you bring in somebody like Josh Wood, especially after spring, you're doing it with a declaration of you are going to be the guy to move forward. Can they fix that? In terms of being under center, I don't know. I don't know how well it's going to gel. When you lose a head coach, when you lose that many transfers, you're supposed to take a step back. So I think, step back is there for them. The running back room is going to be fine there. I think they're going to be able to run the ball well, but is it enough to maintain control of a football game? I don't know if it's going to be there right out of the gate for them. They have a pretty tough schedule. I think they're top 15 in strength of schedule this year, so it's going to be an uphill battle for them, especially early on, to get that offense in line. I think defensively they'll be able to hold their own. I think the tough part for them will be generating pressure, especially against bigger offensive lines. I think they'll have a tough time doing that. But if they play well on the back end, they can kind of limit that. I think they're going to have to live in that realm of not allowing a team to score more than 24 points to get a win. Ideally, you want to keep them sub 30. But with this team trying to find themselves offensively, they're going to have to go 24 lower, especially to start the season.
Yeah, no doubt about it. All right, there's 3 more teams left. Sam, are you okay? I said about an hour. We're at 58 minutes in. Are you good to get these final 3 in? All right, let's go ahead and run through.
Yep.
We got the UC Davis Aggies up next as they lost to number 3 South Dakota 35-21 in the quarterfinals, ending their season. They had a successful campaign, 11-3, with a 9-game win streak and a 2-point loss on national television to number 2 Montana State. Former Aggie QB and now head coach Tim Plow is back, looking to build on 2024 successes. While the passing offense was tops in the Big Sky, their run game was lacking despite having Land Larison, who's now with the New England Patriots. I understand he also was injured here in the preseason, so wish him all the best. He had 1,511 yards last year, finishing 10th in the conference and 80th in the run nationally. A large class of recruits incoming, including newcomer to replace the All-American quarterback Miles Hastings. A strong group of quarterbacks will make competition fun to watch. Offensive line returns almost intact from last year, which is a key aspect to the 2025 success. UC Davis was a fantastic program last year. Tim Plow, head coach. Brandon, we'll start with you. We got a chance to talk to him a good bit, and man, what a job he did. And he just kind of has that, not only just that passion for that program because he played there, but he brings something else, a little bit of an it factor there for UC Davis.
Yeah, he is a very pragmatic individual. Really enjoy watching him coach on the sideline as well. I think the toughest thing that they have going into the year, you lose your quarterback, you lose your running back. You didn't really lose much else, I would say, to the transfer portal. Another thing that's not going to be in your favor, the order in which these games come out. I think so many times we look at, okay, their strength of schedule is this, that, and the other, but it's how these games end up shaping out for them and when they hit for them. So I think for UC Davis, defensively, I think they'll be really, really good. I think they will make strides, probably the biggest strides in the Big Sky defensively. I think they may have the best defense in the Big Sky when it's all said and done. Offensively, again, quarterback, running back, all gone. They're going to have to figure out that production there, and I don't think the schedule, that game against Mercer, looms very large. I don't know how that one's going to play out for them out of the gate. I think it could be tough to start for the Aggies, but I think when it's all said and done, they'll be contenders later in the year.
Sam, UC Davis, not much of a surprise, but I don't know that you put them in that top tier a couple years ago, and they've just continued to climb and climb and climb. And, of course, when they hired Tim Plow, a former alumni, played there, they got that connection, and, man, he's really done a great job.
Yeah, and I think he was the spark that UC Davis really needed, because we always looked at them as a program with massive potential,
Mm.
just with location and resources. I believe at least a couple of years ago they had the highest budget, athletic department budget, among FCS programs. As far as ones publicly that we know about, we can't find the finances of the private schools, but I believe their athletic department budget is around $45 million. So you always felt like they had massive potential, and then last year was really their breakout year. And I think they might have a chance to be even better than last year. It all, I mean, the variable in that is obviously quarterback play. It kind of sounds like Caden Pinnick could be the front runner for that starting quarterback job. He is just a redshirt freshman, potentially beating out Grant Harper, who's in his sixth year in the program. And so if Pinnick is, actually the guy, they officially name him number one, that would be, very impressive for him to beat out Harper. But he has, five starters coming back on the offensive line. Their top receiver from last year is coming back. All conference tight end is coming back, and Winston Williams. And then defensively, Brandon touched on it. I mean, they have a ton of talent on that defensive side of the football, led by the Rex and Connor Porters. Or Rex and Porter Connors.
Connors.
Those two, yeah, totally mix that around. Those are all American level guys. And then I
Yeah.
really liked what they did in the transfer portal. They brought in three FCS all conference guys on the defensive side of the football. Daryl Porter, Jacob Syke, and then Kalani Riddick is a really good safety coming from SEMO. So they UC Davis doesn't really attack the transfer portal a whole lot. There's certainly some academic things that make it a bit more challenging to add transfers,
Mhm.
but it seems like when they do, they really hit. And they brought in uh, Myers, the linebacker last year. He was
Right.
a heck of a player, and they brought him in from within the Big Sky Conference, and so they usually hit really strongly on their transfers.
Yeah, Cole Batson from Boston College and Josiah Allen from UTEP also in that secondary should help out for UC Davis. All right, moving on. We got Montana Grizzlies 9-5, 5-3. They're in the conference, and it was again another successful year for Montana. And the Grizzlies coach Bobby Hauck, he is obviously a legend in the Big Sky, but they cannot find a way to get out of their own way sometimes. They lost to number 2 South Dakota State 35-18 in the second round, finishing that 9-5, 5-3 schedule after a weak strength of schedule. I think was a big question mark. Logan Fife transferred to New Mexico State, but they brought in USC transferred Jake Jensen to compete for sophomore Khalil Aliyat in that position. So Montana is another team, and they're in that Big Sky. We expect them to be at the top or near the top, competing against Montana State every single year. Sam, I'll let you start here with the Grizzlies. Coach Hauck is a legend, right? I mean, he's done such amazing things there. He tends to be able to reload this squad. Doesn't look like they have to do too much, but I think they're right there again. They're in the top of the Big Sky.
Yeah, I touched on it a bit earlier on the show of, a lot of question marks defensively, but when you look at their schedule, it really seems to set up well for them to, potentially win double-digit games during the regular season. I think they really just have to settle on a quarterback, and maybe that's easier said than done if no one grabs the job. But it was just a mess last year, and Ayat, it seems like they want him to grasp it, but they keep on bringing in FBS transfers to push him.
Yeah.
This year it's Jake Jensen coming from USC, and so we'll see if maybe there's another quarterback controversy there or not. But they have young wide receivers that are ready to step up. They have Eli Gilman coming back, a top running back in the FCS, a pretty experienced offensive line as well. Defensively, I think they have a chance to be really good at linebacker. And they bring in a couple of former all conference guys at the linebacker position. Elijah Tolbert comes in from Eastern Illinois. And then Peyton Wing was a second team all Big Sky guy
Yeah.
last year. at Portland State. And so it seems like they're going to depend a lot on transfers when it comes to revamping this defense. And I think the overarching storyline with Montana was 2023. Was that just something where they got hot, they got a top 2 playoff seed, they hosted throughout and they made it to Frisco? Like, was that just a one-time thing? And last year where they lost in the second round, is that more of like, okay, this is the Montana, like they're a second round quarterfinal type team? 2023 was just, they caught lightning in a bottle. That is my biggest question, is where is this program? Because
Yeah.
the hot seat is always a tough question, but if they, if they don't make the playoffs this year, that's a whole different discussion. But I expect them to make the playoffs. If they lose in the second round, like, that's just not the standard for Montana. And so
Right.
where does this program go if they again fall short when it comes to the postseason?
Yeah, I mentioned Wing. He is a Buchanan Award watch list. Brandon, they also bring in edge rusher Solomon Tulapupu out of USC, a 4-star out of high school, Hayden Schwartz from Minnesota, DJ Peavy from USC. So, Coach, how can expect this defense to be better? And they're going to need it here in the Big Sky, but can they get over and eclipse what those teams are doing in and around them, including Montana State and UC Davis, to stay there in the top tier of the Big Sky?
Yeah, and we saw it a little bit last year. I think it's healthy dysfunction on the sidelines at time there for Montana. They like to bully people in terms of on the field of play. And it was all fine and well until they got punched in the mouth, and they didn't necessarily respond well in the playoffs to that. And I think that's going to be the identity of this team. They're going to be able to bully a lot of people defensively. They're going to be able to dictate the line of scrimmage. Offensively, they're going to run the ball first and foremost, no matter who's the quarterback is. They're going to live through their run game. The passing game, I think, to Sam's point, you don't bring in, an FBS guy, a USC guy, if you have total confidence in your guy that's already in the quarterback room. It's going to be, they know they're going to need to be able to pass the ball better than they did last year at times, even with Luke Fife there. And the expectation is that's going to take a step back. Can they rectify that? There's going to be a lot of unknowns with this team in terms of, not necessarily to Sam's point, they're going to win 10 games. How do they respond till they get to the playoffs? Because this could very well be a team that does make it to the quarterfinals, make it to the semifinal, make it to Nashville. Or this could be a team that gets punched in the mouth and doesn't respond late in the season and in the playoffs, and then have a really tough conversation or introspective look at themselves and go, okay, what is the problem with our philosophy and how we go about this in this age of football? I think, this whole bully ball philosophy works very few places. It works in the Dakotas because you have the size, the strength, and the ability to do it over the course. It has worked in Montana before. It has worked, you can throw Idaho in there at times as well. But for the most part, you got to be able to throw the football. You can't just line up and say, hey, we're going to run the ball down your throat. We're going to, line up with a fullback and a running back, and we're going to go, 1,000 paper cuts. That's going to be the philosophy that Montana has to solve and to quell everybody on Twitter, because I know what people say about me. Blake Bohannon transferred to Montana. The Kennesaw State guy, we'll talk about a Kennesaw State guy. So Blake Bohannon transferring to Montana, good for him, just because, Nathan, we knew him as
he's a good kid.
A middle schooler. We met him. So that's really cool personally for us, and I want to stay in the good graces of the Bohannon family.
Yeah. Well, it's good. That is good for him. And I gave him some what are those funnel cakes one time on the sidelines, and almost Coach Bohannon flipped his lid because I didn't realize he wasn't supposed to have sugar. All right. Up next, our final team, of course, is Montana State Bobcats. Head coach Brick Vegan in his 5th season, 15-1, 8-0 in the Big Sky. Finishing first, they lost to number 4 North Dakota State, 35-32 in the national championship. The Bobcats losses are significant, with Tommy Malott, running back Scottre Humphrey, and defensive end Brody Grebe. Montana State does return leading tackler Rylan Ort and defensive end Kenneth Eden the fourth. Offensively, running back Adam Jones, who had over 1,000 yards and 14 touchdowns, returns, and star wide receiver Taco Dowler is back in 2025. They are getting national attention. The quarterback situation will be played out in camp. Transfer Justin Lamson from Syracuse, also some time at Stanford, joins Montana State to compete against Chance Wilson, who to be the QB1. It should be fun. And Sam, I'll give you the shot here first with Montana State. They are who they are, and it took them a little bit to climb that ladder, but now that they're here, Brent Vigen's a quality head coach. They brought in all kind of talent. He's done amazing things with Tommy Mellott and what they did in 2024. Now they got to find a way to get to that championship game and win it.
Yeah, Vigen has made Montana State such a great developmental program, and the fact that they lost, not a lot of transfers to the FBS. They lost about 6, but a lot of those guys were headline names, and then they lose an historic senior class. But they only brought in 3 transfers from the FBS, and then no transfers from the FCS. There's a few sub D1 guys, but the fact that they lost the talent that they lost and didn't try to reload through transfers tells me that Vigen and his staff are very confident in some of the young up and comers that are ready to step into starting roles. And to me, with Montana State, I think they have a stronger nucleus back than maybe some people think. 3 full-time starters back on the offensive line, and then a 4th guy as well in Cedric Jefferson, who started the first few games last year. They'll plow the way for 2 all Big Sky running backs. You mentioned Adam Jones is coming back, but they also get Julius Davis back, who was their top guy 2 years ago, and then battled through some injuries last year. Taco Dowler, coming back at wide receiver. Then defensively, 3 starters coming back on the defensive line, plus multiple rotational guys. And even though technically they don't return, any full-time starters at linebacker, due to their rotation, they do bring back 2 linebackers who finished in the top 5 in team tackles from last year, Neil Daly and Bryce Grebe, who are ready to step right in and be good linebackers for them. Secondary, for the most part, new for Montana State, and so that's the question mark for them defensively. And then obviously the big question mark for them is quarterback spot. To me, it kind of seems like Justin Lamson is, it's his job to lose. It sounds like he's having a strong camp. I just saw that, in one of their scrimmages, he went like 16 of 18 for 150 plus yards or something like that. So, and that was going up against the ones, good on good there for Montana State. He brings out a rushing ability as well. Is he going to be Tommy Mellott? No, but he does bring in that rushing ability, and that's really how he was utilized at Stanford, was his rushing ability.
Right.
So if quarterback play can hit, secondary can play consistently, I think this team is right back in there when it comes to the national title discussion.
Yeah, Brandon, I don't think that there's any reason not to believe that this Montana State team can't make a deep playoff run. Question at quarterback, that's always, going to be something that is kind of like a teeter-totter, right? If you get that right balance, then you're all right. But otherwise, it can really turn up things upside down. But I think a lot of people have a lot of confidence in head coach Brent Vigen to make the right call.
Yeah, and if you tell me they got the number 1 quarterback transfer to the FCS, then yeah, pencil them in for a national championship game appearance. I think, to Sam's point, the question mark is going to be the quarterback there. Is Lamson as tough as Tommy Mellott? I don't think you're going to find anybody as tough as Tommy Mellott necessarily to take the field at any given moment. Is he bigger than Tommy Mellott? He's definitely taller than Tommy Mellott. Tommy Mellott was 5'10" and a half,
Right.
no matter what they put on the media guide for him. So could that open up, some scenarios for them to throw the ball a little bit more? I don't think so. I think it's very overhyped, the 6-foot barrier there. Me personally, as a 5'8" guy who's been 5'8" most of his life, I think that 6-foot barrier is very overhyped. But, does that Stanford, and he didn't play much in Syracuse, got injured there. Does that transfer over what he can bring to help them win games? I don't know. But if you're telling me that he can play a little under the par of Tommy Mellott, then I have every reason to believe they will be back in the national title picture. If this doesn't go well and he doesn't mesh, he doesn't gel, we're looking at a conference favorite that could finish, because I think everybody else in the conference is going to be close. I don't know if they have a big gap as the polling will say between 1 and 2 and 3 in the conference. So if this doesn't hit, could they fall to maybe 3 in conference? Maybe. Could they fall to 4 in conference? Depends on circumstances there, but they have, as Sam mentioned, a lot of good pieces back. A lot of guys who, may not have been the starter, but saw a significant playing time, especially defensively as well. So I think for Montana State, certainly so that they get the top billing in the preseason polls, but there is a chance that this could not go well for the Bobcats. And I just want to put it out there. There is a chance that this doesn't go well for them.
That's the "I told you so" future tweet from Brandon Joseph clip. All right, that is the Big Sky Big Sky Conference. Sam, I've kept you 15 minutes longer than I said I would. Thank you so much. Real quick, what is your schedule for week 0? Where are you going to be? What you're going to do? And then anything else you want to promote?
Yeah, I'll just be watching from home for week 0, not traveling to any games, just so I can catch all of them, in front of me in my home office. Not sure about week 1 if I'm going to go anywhere either, but week 2, I'm pretty sure it's week 2 is when South Dakota State heads out to Montana State. So got that all booked up to head to Bozeman for that one. That should be a great clash right there. And yeah, just finishing out this summer with some more preview material, but starting this week now we got actual games to talk about instead of all these hypotheticals. So really excited to get into like actual game preview type of analysis.
Yeah, and you and Zach McKinnell do a great job on the podcast. He's obviously joins you with Hero Sports. They do an amazing job. Everyone that follows FCS follows Sam Herder, so I don't really need to promote your social media stuff, but please do follow Sam if you don't already. Listen to the podcast, support these FCS journalists because they really do.
I do want to point something out really quick.
Okay.
For Sam, sorry to interrupt you. He was the only person. Remember when Colorado and Syracuse wanted to play a spring game and the NCAA said not going to happen? Sam was the only person to figure out the line in there, and I think he tweeted it out. That was the real precipice of why it didn't happen, mainly because nobody else would be able to do it themselves. And I think Sam didn't get enough credit for that because we're going to see a lot more of these scrimmages now because there's ample time to prepare for it. And you're going to see a lot of FBS scrimmaging between universities and institutions. And Sam was the only person that I saw, mainstream media included, that pointed that line out as the reason why they did not clear them to play that scrimmage. So I want to definitely give Sam that credit because when these games start happening in the next couple of years,
there you go, Sam.
That guy had it first. Well, he's now this way in my box. So
yeah. Well, there you go.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
I mean, Brandon's giving you a compliment. I mean, you guys have had barbs back and forth. It's always obviously in good fun. But, your content's fantastic. And those of us who grew up with the FCS and want to see it thrive, we need people like you and Zach to really, really be the coal in the engine of this steam engine, the freight liner that goes forward. Because I can tell you, sometimes it's an uphill battle. We want to promote these programs. You can't get an SID to call you back or whatever. So you guys do a wonderful job, and I do appreciate you taking the time to join us tonight and go over the Big Sky.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me on. Great discussion, and anytime you want me back on to talk about whatever, would definitely be happy to.
All right, my apologies to the wife for the 20-minute delay. Now you can go have supper or whatever. All right, Sam, thank you so much for joining us. That is Sam Herder from Hero Sports. Brandon, he's always got great insights. He does a great job on the socials and on the Hero Sports, and do appreciate him joining us. I did not keep him on board for the prediction portion of the program, and let's go ahead and go through. These are mine, and you can dispute what I have so far on the table for the Big Sky 2025 predictions. Let me see if I got this right. Whoops, a daisy. No, that's the wrong one. Nope, that's not the right one. All right, here we go. Northern Colorado is last. Cal Poly. Let me see here. I got it. Here we go. All right, yeah. Northern Colorado is who I have in the bottom seat there. Any questions or comments about that, Brandon? Yeah, you got Cal Poly. Then you got Portland State at the bottom. I've got Weber State finishing just above Portland State. And let's see. Then you've got, let me get that one done. Okay. I don't know why I can't move that one, but that's okay. I want that one gone. All right, here we go. Idaho State above Weber State. I'm doing this blind because I can't really see what's next. Eastern Washington up next. And then Idaho Vandals, Sacramento State, Northern Arizona, the Grizz. UC Davis is my picks. And, of course, Montana State. Brandon, you got any thoughts on this? I think you can see it on the board.
Yeah, I mean, I think the top three, whether it's Montana State, Montana, UC Davis, whether it's UC Davis, Montana State, Montana, any order of those three viable. They're all playoff teams. Northern Arizona, Sacramento State. That's that next group. You can throw Idaho in there. Okay, is this a 4+ bid conference? If so, edge to Northern Arizona. I would say out of the gate, without ever seeing them play, I'd put Idaho ahead of Sac State. That could change. The best of the rest is that whole bottom row, and I think Eastern Washington, Idaho State, and Weber State, at the end of the day, will all be interchangeable. And then the bottom three are the bottom three. I think, that's, no disrespect, but I mean, thanks for showing up.
Well, there is such a big difference between some of those teams. I mean, it's just you have that first and second tier. Some of these conferences that have 12 teams, you maybe have the top tier, maybe second tier, third, sometimes even fourth. Here, you just have this line between Idaho, Sacramento State, if they can pull their stuff together, and then kind of everybody else. I don't know that Idaho State has the gas to jump up into the next tier right now, but certainly Northern Colorado and Cal Poly and Eastern Washington, they've got a lot of work to do. So that's my 2 cents. The next thing we have coming up is our, let's see, I think it's our name segment. Let's see where that is. Talk amongst yourself, Brandon. By the way, how's the family? You said you were looking for a place in the area for to move into? Yeah?
Yeah, those things move fast, and then, it's hurry up and wait, and then, things happen. You fall through things, and you have to hit the full reset button. So it was a whirlwind, 5 days last week, but,
yeah,
hit the reset button and go attack the day. As Kirby Smart would say.
Well, I can tell you this much: it's never easy when you're trying to find a house in a market that's kind of bubbled right now.
It is just it's a weird time to be alive with everything, but it
is a weird time.
Can't complain. Can't complain. High school football, taking off too. So just a lot going on, and
well, just good. Right? I mean, it's good to be wanted.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and take a look at my all names team. This is for 2025. My all names team FCS edition. We've got an incarnate word, Pig Cage. Yeah, Pig Cage. He's a defensive back there for the Cardinals. Unique
I feel like
Valentine.
You should be a defensive tackle with that name.
You would think. Cage. You would think. Unique Valentine out of UT Martin is a linebacker. Then you got Tommy Running Rabbit out of Montana. He is a running back, of course. Crush Sowers from Southern Utah. You also have Samurai Anderson. How about Samurai, a linebacker there for Eastern Washington?
It's a good linebacker name.
That's a heck of a linebacker name. Then you got St. Francis, who's getting rid of Division I everything, apparently, going down to Division III. But, hey, he's still in the FCS for the time being. And Guzzy Kayad. How about that guy? Offensive lineman Guzzy Kayad in the all names team. Then you got Weber State, Zoom Esplin. Offensive lineman Zoom Esplin.
Yeah, it doesn't fit an offensive lineman.
It doesn't fit an offensive lineman. But you know what? How do you know? Well, Grizzlies, Clay Oven. My girlfriend does all kind of pottery, so that tracks. Clay Oven's a linebacker. Then you got Gumbo Gaskins out of Sanford, a long snapper. Gamble Ford out of Norfolk State is a long snapper. No, yeah. Gamble's the long snapper. Gumbo's the defensive back. Knowledge.
You better be on the defensive side of the ball if you're Gumbo.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. Knowledge Davis out of Illinois State, or Indiana State rather. No, that's the friggin'
Eastern
Panthers.
Illinois.
It's Eastern Illinois.
Eastern Illinois.
Yeah, defensive line. Then you got Dude Pearson, Central Arkansas. Rayson Delgatti, Cal Poly offensive lineman. Seabrook Collette out of Wofford is a long snapper. Mansfield Owsley, offensive lineman out of Georgetown. Stony Brook, Royalty Riley. Riley is a wide receiver. Gatlin Hancock, Gardner Webb, tight end, and Achilles Anderson, not related to Samurai, out of Harvard. That's what we've got there
Seems
for
like a choice.
all
Achilles Anderson.
names team. All right,
Seems
Brandon.
like a choice.
Thank you so much. Hey, listen, I do appreciate Sam joining us. We're going to put a wrap on this one. We have a show coming up Friday. We're going to record with Zach McKinnell. We're going to talk about week 0 and just the FCS. I know you'll probably be doing some high school football, so if you can join us, great. I don't have a time for that, but we will make it work. But you're the best. Got the best insight. I had people texting me going, "Where's Brandon last week?" So you were obviously missed. But with family and new baby and moving, we all understand. And life happens sometimes. But it's football season. It's getting better.
Yeah, last Saturday without college football until I think they said January something.
Should be late January. Yep,
Yeah.
Absolutely. All
But
right.
'tis the season.
'Tis the season for football. It is the FCS Checkdown. I do want to thank Sam Herder for joining us. Brandon, I appreciate you taking the time out from the family to record, and want to wish Coach Jackson a happy birthday. We will be back on Friday with a week.
Are we guessing age?
79.
Oh, I was gonna go a little bit younger, 73.
Yeah, I'm just teasing. I think he's probably. I don't know how old Coach. You know what? He could be 52 for all I know. He's got the spirit of a 20-year-old. That's for certain. But happy birthday, Coach. We missed you again. Thanks to Sam. Now I have to do the obligatory. We want to grow this channel. We want to grow. We be here for the FCS fans. You have to like and subscribe to this channel. If we get 500 subscribers, we can monetize, and I can finally pay Brandon some money for his great insights. So, and Coach Jackson, and if we get be able to monetize, we will take in some money and do giveaways and all kind of stuff. We won't keep all of it ourselves for the most part. But
if we hit 500, we can monetize. I will go to Nashville, and if South Dakota State makes it to the national championship game, which they won't, sorry guys, I will go hang out at a South Dakota State tailgate. How about that?
Well, that doesn't sound like a terrible thing to do, by the way. I don't know if you're sitting there.
They want me there. I think that's the funny part.
Well, I mean, I don't think either of us are welcome after some of the things. But listen, I've been wrong. South Dakota State, quality program. We'll see what happens. Brandon, you are the best. Thank
Lovely
you so
airport
much.
there, I hear.
I hear. At least they have one, right? At least they have one, kind of, sort of. All right, Brandon, you are the best. Thank you guys so much for joining us here on the FCS Checkdown. For Brandon Joseph, I'm Nathan McCurry. We say so long from the FCS Checkdown. Like and subscribe. You can also get this show on Spotify. And thanks again to Sam Herder. Sam Herder, great job. Thank you so much.
The ultimate voice in FCS football. You forgot his name.
I know. I love Sam. He's great. Can't wait to talk to Zach McKinnell as well later this week. Shut up. I'm good. We're good. You're good. All right, it's the FCS Checkdown.
Forget Zach's name. Forgot Sam's name.
Week 0! Let's go. It's the FCS Checkdown, baby. Come on.